Failure. What emotions does that word bring up for you? What memories? What stories have you told yourself about it? Do you use these words to describe yourself? What if failure isn't a label, but an experience? What if fear is just courage seen from a different angle? What if it's not who you are, but something that you experience? Something that offers feedback, adaptation, and growth, so that success becomes more likely next time. At its core, fear of failure is a protective psychological response. It's rooted in ancient survival instincts, fear of rejection, loss, and social exclusion. What do I mean by a protective psychological response? Essentially, our minds influence us to think and feel certain things to keep us safe. Part of that safety includes being a part of society, with good relationships. We want people to like us. In the modern world, like many instincts, this protective response has been distorted. We've kept the same wiring from the beginnings of our species, even as our environment has changed completely. Our biopsychosocial evolution, in other words, how our bodies, minds, and social motivations and values move slower than our ability to innovate, meaning we're constantly playing catch up with our environment. A small few learn to master this mismatch. They harness their psychology to push boundaries. The rest of us, myself included, get to enjoy the fruits of their courage. In this video, we'll unpack where fear of failure comes from, when it's useful, when it isn't, and how you can reframe it to move towards joy, mastery, and growth, especially as a creative. When it comes to creative work, the fear of failure can run very deep, because creative work can be seen as more than something we do. It can be seen as a reflection of who we are. Creative success is ambiguous. It's not easily defined. There's no clear path, no guaranteed outcome. This means that we tend to attach success to the closest, most known things. And in the modern world, this is often metrics such as likes, follows, or money. Even though these metrics have nothing to do with the meaning and fulfillment derived by the act of creativity. People who are highly creative are sensitive creatures, deeply so, which makes them more attuned to emotion, but also perhaps more vulnerable to rejection. There's rarely a positive, safe, and structured environment for creative minds to inhabit and share together. In part, I think this is because we actually shapeshift like chameleons. We're exploring, adapting, and reinventing. That's part of the open-mindedness of the highly creative. We also battle perfectionism, and perhaps hardest of all, we expose our inner world to others again and again and again. Creating is essentially saying, here's a part of my soul, please be kind. And when society measures worth in numbers like likes, views, and revenue, that's a brutal environment for something as fragile and personal as art. From childhood, we're trained to chase correctness through grades, approval, performance. We're rewarded for doing things that have already been done before, not for things that haven't, like invention. Even in the workforce, most jobs prioritize predictability and replication over experimentation. Only at the highest levels does creativity get rewarded, and even then it's often bounded by risk management. Because of this, it is common for people to feel like they themselves are a failure when they make a mistake. That failure means we're not capable, instead of simply not capable yet. That's what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset, where failure defines identity. Its opposite, a growth mindset, sees failure as feedback. These memories, experiences, and feelings can be translated into data to help iterate, improve, and evolve. When we approach creativity with a growth mindset, failure becomes a teacher. We don't throw the work away, we refine it. We don't collapse inwards, we learn. Now, of course, not every creative goal is about a better product. For some, fulfillment lives in the process itself. For others, especially those whose livelihoods depend on the creative output, feedback is part of the loop. Either way, seeing failure as experience rather than an identity allows for that adaptation, in craft and in the self. In a capitalistic world, creative worth is often tied to what the world gives you as a reward: followers, sales, money. If those numbers become your only compass, you'll always feel lost. Failure can be used to improve the way you act, but it should never define you. Because intrinsic motivation, curiosity, mastery, joy, is what sustains creativity in the long run, the moment your self-worth depends on the outcome, fear tightens its grip. In performance psychology, we talk about the optimal zone of discomfort, where growth and adaptability thrive. Too little challenge and you stagnate. Too much, you burn out. But that middle space, the edge of discomfort, is where creativity lives. That's the stretch zone. Everyone's threshold is different, but the principle is universal. You cannot innovate from safety. Eliminating all risk of failure eliminates the possibility of discovery. So how do you build a healthy relationship with failure? First, you can practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself and remember that this is an experience, not a measure of you as a person. Reflect, don't ruminate. Ask, what happened? What can I improve? Rather than, why am I like this? Experiment deliberately. Treat creative acts as experiments, not verdicts on your personality. Shift your metrics from, did it succeed? To, what did I learn? Creativity requires exposure, and exposure feels like danger. But it's that vulnerability that gives art its power. It's what connects meaning to audience, authenticity to expression. The paradox is that the same system that teaches us to fear failure is also the one that needs what failure creates: innovation, empathy, beauty, change. Fear and courage, in that sense, are one in the same. They share the same physiological roots, the same trembling energy before the leap. So ask yourself, what would your creative life look like if you measured success not through perfection, but growth, depth, and the quiet joy of creating something meaningful? Ciao.